are, and welcome to the Friday Night Movie Podcast. Today we have a very exciting guest, someone that Lily and I mean, all of us are, but Lily and I especially are very excited to have with us on the pod. But before we introduce our guest, Lily went on a bit of a magical adventure.
I did.
If you will. And I was wondering, just catch us up on this.
So I'm in
your
Philadelphia.
Wonderful wizarding adventure.
I'm in Philadelphia, and the Franklin Institute, which is this massive science museum.
Famous for the giant heart. It has that giant heart exhibit where you can climb through the aortas and
like walk through a
Wait, so I'm sorry. So this is a science museum
that then doing a magical exhibit.
Doing a magical exhibit.
But it's
are like, we saying that Harry Potter is real?
Is real. Is that, I guess.
Is that the connection?
Let me tell you something. To children and adults, it seems to be. Because it seems like me and Dad were the only people that were like, what the hell is this?
And wait,
the entire time.
And as I understand it, you and Dad had to go through a chunk of the museum, just the two
by
of you,
ourselves.
So not even with a fan.
And Dad, they do it kind of like Universal Studios. I think they really use that like model for the curation of this exhibit, because you start off in a room it's beautifully curated. I was so impressed with just how they mounted this thing. It does feel more like a ride or something you'd see at a theme park than a museum. It was spectacular that you're in a room and all the sides of the room are screens, and it's as if you're in the train station. So the right is one platform, the left is another. Your name is up on things because there's like a bracelet with your identity, and it follows you around through the whole thing. It's very well done. And you have to be in this room with the group of people you're with. But of course, nobody waited for us. So they went through because we were a little bit late. And Dad just turns to one of the people in the exhibit, and he's just, sorry, can we just skip this? And we're trying to find my nieces and stuff. And they're like, no.
Dad is the only person.
Dad's like, my granddaughters are ahead, and they went through this already. And we have a baby with it. We just want to like get to them. We don't need to see this part.
You had your almost 2-year-old.
Yeah, a 20-month-old who loved it. He was just like running around the whole entire thing. And the lady was like horrified. She's like, what do you know? You cannot skip this. You have to stay in this room till this video is finished. And so we made it up with the rest of the group. Your wife had infinite patience with me because I don't understand a lot of what's going on, but I ask a lot of questions. So it's super annoying.
What was give me an example of a good question that you asked.
I don't know. I
like when you saw the giant dragon or the Chamber of Secrets or
I said, what secrets are inside? And she said a snake. And I was like, that makes no sense. And she tried to explain that one to me. And I was like, but it says secrets. And there's like these big snakes on the out. I was like waiting for something so intense and magical inside. And she was like, it's just like a giant snake that they're hiding. I had a lot of questions about like genetics. So they
genetics.
Because they had all this stuff about muggles and mudbloods and half-bloods and born bloods and all that stuff. And I was just like, because they have the lineage of one of the families or something that they created for the movie, but they put it on display. And I had a lot of questions, and Allie was just like trying to keep it together, answering these questions. But you get to go under the stairs. They have Harry's, I guess, where he lives at home with his muggle family, I learned. And the kids got to go in his bed under the stairs, which is so cute. And then there was a very big debate about at dinner, because my cousin came to dinner and she had a lot to say about this, that my cousin Danielle, shout out to her, that who's the ultimate real bad guy of the movie? Is it that one woman who likes pink because you got to sit in her office? She was some mistress or something.
Oh my gosh, Liz, she's the one. Well, I'm not going to, no spoilers for today's episode.
So this is perfect. This is a perfect segue to this episode. And if Emily, our wonderful guest, likes Harry Potter, we can really dive right in later to this, because the ultimate debate at dinner was, is Voldemort the bad guy, or is that lady who likes pink the bad guy?
Well, on that
of the movie or of the story,
I would say
on that note,
because if I start talking about it, we'll be talking.
I want to make sure we introduce. So today on this episode, we are going to talk eventually about female villains, but we have with us today a very powerful woman who is not a villain, as far as I know. Welcome to the show. welcome to the show, Emily Korteweg. I actually just realized you're from the Netherlands, and I'm positive I'm not pronouncing your last name properly. Could you give us a little lesson?
Yes, you actually did it really well in the Anglified version.
Okay.
But it is Korteweg.
Korteweg.
This is really fun for a podcast. As guys
Korteweg.
Gotta get the like in Scheveningen.
Scheveningen, yeah. It is it means shortcut.
Oh,
shortcut, it's also a place. Oh wait, you're
But you're very tall.
I'm
very tall.
I'm tall, but I take shortcuts, you know?
You're tall, but you take shortcuts. Well, Emily
lived in the Netherlands.
I would say Emily is a very hardworking woman. She is very successful. The COO and head of production at Watch This Ready, which has produced some phenomenal award-winning films with a huge slate of upcoming projects. In production right now is a movie that everyone will be hearing about if they haven't already, called 80 for Brady. Emily oversees Watch This Ready's entire slate of scripted and unscripted features, TV shows, podcasts. She has a film coming out now called God's Time. And she was also an associate producer on The Climb, which we all had the chance to see recently, which maybe we'll get to touch on a bit. And she is just a force in the film world, a wonderful producer. And we're so excited to have you on the show. Welcome, Emily.
Thank you so much. That introduction, I don't know if I deserve it, but I am like clapping for someone else. But
it's all real. It's all things that you have accomplished. So you're from the Netherlands.
You also have hung out with our mother in London.
I have.
On our
that should actually go into your bio now. You're going to have
that should. She hung out
on your CV
with the Corman siblings' mother. She is, first of all, so charming, so eloquent, so interested, just like altogether fabulous, you know? And actually, I think we're talking about female villains. There's, a villain denotes bad, but let's be honest, generally, and we'll get to it, it also means they're kind of fabulous most of the time.
Yeah.
So
powerful, fabulous.
Powerful, fabulous.
So you're from the Netherlands. You now are both in LA and New York. How did you find your way into not just producing, but producing in the States and find yourself at, where you're at now with Watch This Ready?
Yes. So I truly would first say by sheer willpower, because I went to business school. I studied finance and literature, which many people, didn't put together. And I grew up in the Netherlands. I studied in London, but I grew up in the Netherlands. And so I didn't have a way into this industry at all. But I always knew I wanted to do this. I just didn't know what this meant entirely. Then when I was 17, my parents were crazy enough to let me convince them that I had an internship planned. I actually had an internship planned, but I convinced them that I should go to LA for a month. And I worked for a record label called Concord Music Group that was affiliated with Village Roadshow and had, got exposed to what that was. So I got a better sense of what it was. I also met some other people that trip. Then I did my actual degree. And then I got an internship at the Weinstein Company by physically knocking on the door in Soho and saying, "Do you guys need an intern?" And at the time, that was still, a very great place to be. That truly, I think, opened a lot of doors for me afterwards. But anyway, I then continued to dabble between both at school, doing, internships at private equity companies, which I hated. And at the same time, organizing and performing in performing arts things. And then when I was done in London, with my bachelor and my master's, I went to LA for 2 weeks. I declined 2 jobs in London, went to LA. Now get to the actual meat of it. I worked at an agency there. I ended up getting to an agency, which was amazing. It's called Verve Talent and Literary Agency. And I will always be extremely grateful to them, because also visa issues included, they took me on, and they were young and growing, which I really enjoyed because it meant that I could grow faster with them and create avenues that I don't think I could have done at, the bigger ones. So I was in the finance and packaging department. For people listening, that is, you could call it the producing part of an agency, where you put together features that are not studio features. So, a studio director might have an independent script that you then put together the financing on that is related to the cast and everything else, but you don't actually go into production. And then I always knew I wanted to produce. This opportunity came about, and I decided to take it. And I'm extremely happy that I did. It also, the skill set that I gained at the agency was so valuable, but I always knew I wanted to not be a middleman. I wanted to make the thing, if not own it, with the people that I work with,
So my follow-up question I was going to ask, so you said you knew you always wanted to do this, even though you weren't sure what this is. And you find yourself eventually at a company like Watch This Ready. And I'm wondering for you, as you have been on this journey and you're producing films, what is it that drives you? What types of stories do you want to make? Or how important is that to you in terms of what you produce?
I think it's extremely important to me. And I think I become more and more aware of that because I look at the world and I understand the world better and I interact with it. So but when I say luckily I work at a place that, where we all have the same mentality. We want to move people. And that means a variety of things. But to me, I kind of like to describe it as, there's this button in humanity, in people, that if you press it, opens a door. And that button is called, it's universal. And it's, I think, called just what we have in common. It's our common humanity. And if you manage to press that button and open that door, then you can do a bunch of things. But how do you press that button? You do it by, entertaining. And entertaining can look different ways. It can be making people cry, laugh, whatever. But so I want to move people because I think our medium is extremely powerful. I think if you can get no matter how many people in a room, and that's why I still believe in the theatrical experience so much, if you can get various people in a room with different ideologies, but they walk away with the same feeling, then you can do something really powerful. And besides that, I think that is not just in terms of the viewer's experience, it's also in the making process. I think there's something absolutely magical about, a group of people coming together and really faster than any other industry. They have to work harmoniously and synergetically. And if they do, it becomes this healthy body that just sprints. And that is, it sounds a strange analogy, but I think that's extremely cool. And again, I think it's extremely powerful. And we are just very intentional about what we make. And all of that can live in very different worlds, very different sizes. We have the rights to a space opera. We have the rights to a Michael Lewis book. We are making a Western, and we have a family daisy chain romantic comedy. So there's so many, the worlds don't matter because it's about the characters in them that people will be able to relate to. And so for me, that remains very important. And I think the alternative of being more message driven first doesn't stand the test of time as well. Even if there's a space for it, it's not what I'm interested in doing,
Well, thank you for sharing, because that's
character driven. We talk a lot about the importance of great characters and great character arcs on this podcast. So we really do appreciate that.
That's what often moves us the most.
Because we can relate to character, right?
Exactly.
Nothing else really. Yeah.
And that leads to the next question of, the company like Watch This Ready has made, several notable films, The Climb, Kicks, Hunter Gatherer, and you're currently in production with 80 for Brady, which has a pretty high profile cast. Basically wanted to know if you can tell us a little bit about the film or a little bit about, this next project.
Absolutely. So just a note, it's not extremely important, but some of the Watch Is Ready was really founded like fall of 2019, January 2020. So Michael and Kyle, who are the co-founders, who are brilliant, both businessmen and artists, produced some of the movies you just mentioned before Watch Is Ready's inception, but clearly they're on our site. In terms of 80 for Brady, I mean, it's kind of a legendary collection of human beings deciding to come together. It was Sarah Haskins and Emily Halpern wrote the initial script. Mike and Kyle did some work on that as well. Michael Covino and Kyle Marvin. And Kyle directed. They actually finished principal production last week. So it went very fast. And then it is Frida Marino, Lily Tomlin, Sally Fields, and Jane Fonda, and Tom Brady.
Which is incredible.
Which is incredible. And, I had the pleasure of meeting those ladies, and they are, first of all, it's really inspiring to watch them as professionals, but also, these women have actually been through the ringer when it comes to our industry. And I think we're very much standing on their shoulders in very many ways, but they're just funny and very down to earth. And beautiful. So that's them. And then clearly Tom Brady, great. I haven't met him, but that was fun. And also, I think the world knows about this movie more than anyone would have on another movie, because Tom Brady, the minute Tom Brady is involved, the news platforms that it reaches, the initial press release,
a lot more
exposure
all of a sudden.
Yeah. And then, but, beyond the people on screen, the producers are legendary. Donna Gelati did Hidden Figures, Silver Linings Playbook, Shakespeare in Love. The heads of department are amazing. There's John Toll, who's the DP, who did Braveheart and Vanilla Sky and Almost Famous. And then costume is Betsy Glick. So it just is this wonderful. And I think the production designer is Wynn Thomas, who did A Wrong Still, Do the Right Thing, and also Hidden Figures. So it's this amazing collection of people. And yet it's still movie making. So there's still the ups and downs that you deal with, but I think overall they're extremely excited. And also in what I was talking about earlier, like there is an optimism to the film that they bring to life so beautifully and so gracefully, like there's the comedy that isn't really, that they just managed to give an extra layer together with Mike and Cal that I think is really special.
That is very exciting.
I'm already excited to see it and to see everything else that comes out of your company. I mean, really, really exciting stuff. And to know, just speaking to you one-on-one and hearing from you, that whatever you put out is going to have a focus on, these principles of great characters with real development, to bring people together, to make us feel something. And it's good to know there's someone out there doing the work, doing the real work.
And that compelling case is really important, because I got to tell you, there are a few people in sports I hate more than Tom Brady as an Eagles fan, and I really want to see this movie. So I really,
my brother's very
incredible.
Core.
You have to understand, I am, as you hear, not from here, and I've had to learn a lot about American football also, because it is Michael's next film will have a Pee-wee football element to it.
Cool.
Set in the 90s.
Oh, wow.
I can't say much more about it because we're in the process, but it's I think masterful. But I don't know anything, didn't know anything about American football. And so, I've had to learn to appreciate it. And now I actually understand, it is chess as well as war. So there is something really compelling about it.
That's a great comparison.
It's a great way of explaining it. And if you haven't seen the show, we do highly recommend Friday Night Lights.
I love Friday Night Lights.
Okay. So if you like Friday Night Lights and your
character, do I understand why that game stops every 20 seconds and there's a pile of people and that is exciting? Not entirely, but character-driven
great
show.
Characters.
Loved it.
If you do want to understand like why the game is like the sort of mentality, if you haven't seen yet Any Given Sunday goes into the primal love of that game and why people. There's a lot of monologues in that movie about why the game and people play it and all of that.
Yeah,
you know
I saw. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, when Al Pacino or James Woods or Jamie Foxx are explaining to you like why they love the game, it crystallizes.
Oliver Stone too.
I saw the Northmen this week.
Oh wow!
And there's one.
How was that?
It was interesting.
Yeah.
No, it's solidly executed. I think some plot points, went directions I didn't expect, but I still love Robert Eggers. And anyway, to not distract from what we want to talk about, which is American football, there's a scene in there where a game gets played that I was like, this is, call it rugby, call it American football. A bit more brutal at that time. But yeah, goes back a long while.
Goes back a long way. All right. Well, I'm going to watch out for that. So in talking about great characters, one of the most interesting characters to explore that we actually have not dedicated very much or time to it on this podcast are villains. And if we narrow it down even more, they're female villains, which is what we want to talk with you about today, because we know that great character development is important to you. And great characters are very important to you, and creating these arcs and evolution. And you and I have talked about the importance of nuance in storytelling and in characters. And so what do you think makes, or what are the things that make a great female villain versus, let's say, a forgettable one or an unimpressive one? How do you separate them out? Because there's, epic ones, but they're not necessarily very interesting or complex.
Yeah. Yeah. I think no matter what makes a great female villain is that they are just exhilarating to both men and women, and arguably for different reasons, yet overlapping ones. I think they're dangerous and focused and impenetrable in a very, they're exhilarating. They don't necessarily look back, or if they do, they don't sit on it for very long. And I think that is physically and mentally exciting and empowering. And the empowering point, I think, maybe the ones that are the most memorable are the ones where you do get a peek into the why. And yet, I think actually that maybe sometimes you don't want the why, because it is uncommon to see a woman like disregard conventions and considerations and fear in a very real way. And to see it, even if that means they can be actually heinous people that are very unforgiving, there is something incredible about it. And, that's why, I think, Becky, when this came up briefly, I said to you, Emma by Pablo Larraín is this woman who just, leaves wreckage in her wake. She sets everything on fire and hurts a bunch of people. And for some reason, every woman I've spoken to loves that movie. And I think there are so many more people like that. Again, though, do I think that they're the most memorable if they seem so in the extreme, not looking back, impenetrable, but then still have a peek into the why, even if it's a sliver, even if it's a hint in the eyes, or just a moment where one thing gets said that is not justifying her behavior. I think the ones that are memorable are where they're not being justified, because why do we need to be justified? For once, can we just not be justified?
I have to say, I am with you with that. I guess a villain has to have a motivation. They have to have a thing they're trying to do. But I think sometimes when they overly try to complexify, that's not a word, to make a villain so complex and so justified in their actions, then they lose their villainness. Right? Like, and then they lose their edge, and they're we were just talking about, are you familiar with the X-Men movies?
Yeah.
Okay, so we were talking about the X-Men movies yesterday, and one of the reasons why I don't like the evolution of the Jennifer Lawrence version of Mystique is that I think possibly because Jennifer Lawrence is such a big star, like they couldn't not make that character so complex that she wasn't a villain anymore. And X-Men has gray villains and things like that, but it took the evilness out of the character and the edge off of it because they decided to make it so complex. So,
and when Becky and I were looking at lists of villains and talking about villains and kind of breaking it down, she kept coming up, and I kept being like to Becky, "But she's not. She's so nice." Because I only know the movies.
I'm like, is she that bad? I don't know. I feel like we get a lot of backstory.
She's very cute.
Totally. And to
friendly.
that point, I completely agree. And to that point, I think, again, them being forgiving, that's not, why do they have to be justified in forgiving? You know, like I think to the earlier point of what do we want to make, I'll piggyback off that. I think a lot of material right now is based, and even conversation, a lot is just based on fear. A lot of people are operating from fear. And I don't know if you can blame them because it's a slip, you know, there's many wrong steps you can take, some for good reason that they're being held accountable, but it also creates a certain atmosphere, if you will. And I think when creating a female villain, there's a fear of like, oh, how do we make sure that she's not being seen as this, or like there's a fear of being judged on her character rather than saying, I don't care, the same way that this woman doesn't care. She is just going to be. And that's the ability for a woman to just be whatever the hell she decides to be is empowering, even if it's bad, you know?
That's a great point.
Well, I think that's so, we rarely see that with female characters, you know, regardless of if they're the hero or the villain, right? Allowing them to, you always have to like over explain who they are. Now, so I agree with you. Now, once you're in the world of who that female villain is, and she is, you know, creating her wreckage, as you say, you know, I like a character with texture, you know, they can have that purpose, but where there's, within which you can tell that they're calculating or that there's nuance in their decision making, either or their tact, you know, they have some sort
there's
of
consideration,
right?
I think.
Consideration.
You can see them. You can see. I think that's a very good point. And texture is clearly extremely important to character. I think if you can know that they are considering, but then still decide whatever they're about to do, that is really interesting, because then you can see, you know, it's a decision. It's not a reaction. It's a decision to still do what they are just about to do.
Lily, anything else to add?
I'm loving this. I'm loving this riff because there are so many. Okay, so the Sheriff of Nottingham, right? Who I think Alan Rickman's Sheriff of Nottingham, or Alan Rickman. Just every time you have Alan Rickman, but Alan Rickman in Die Hard and Alan Rickman of Sheriff of Nottingham are two of my favorite movie villains of all time. They don't really waste time and waste energy. Not every villain has to be redeemed, and not every villain has to have some childhood trauma that makes you feel bad for them.
They don't all need a Joker movie.
Well, exactly.
Shai has a lot of issues with too many origin stories. Lily, on the other hand, wants all the origin stories. So we're very split on this podcast.
But my point is I love now that we're threading this through the lens of female villains. I think I love the idea that you don't need to cheat a female villain of that level of malevolence, right?
That's a good point because you don't with men you don't do it for sure.
No.
Yeah.
And also the question. Also, I'm fully talking out loud because this is not me thinking out loud. This is not me having a conclusion on my thoughts on it. I just love this conversation. But if you think about it, the minute you give a lot of reason, to your point, is it still a villain? If you think of Medea, right, who was written BC and murdered her own children and husband, but
that's an extreme villain.
like an unforgiving thing to do. No, but then we have so much understanding of her reason for it that you feel for her,
right,
which is a very complex thing to sit in when you're reading it during you're killing your children. But also, I understand your rage, and so the level of villainous is reduced.
Right, right.
Yeah. So riffing out loud.
No, I agree. I see what you're saying. It like that's what we're all circling here is that when you can reduce the level of villainous, of the evilness if you over explain. Maybe perhaps that's what we're talking about. So we've covered what generally what moves us when it comes to a great villain. Now, I'm going to assume that because of maybe we're all different people, we've grown up in different places than you. Perhaps Lily Shy and I have know some pop culture villains that you're less familiar with, and I want to play a game where each of us are going to pitch you a villain.
Oh yes,
I'm hopefully maybe you're less familiar with some of them. We're each going to pitch you a villain. And then
here's what's actually good.
What?
If I don't know the villain, the pitch has to be even stronger.
It has to be really good. It has
exactly.
If you don't know them, it has to be really good. And then you have to select of those three villains. I mean, she could rank them. We could have her do a buy, rent, meh. With that.
Oh yeah, that's great. So this is like a mix of. So we're going to mix two games. This is the first time we're going to do this. It's pitch imperfect, is what we call it. Where pitch imperfect is a very broad game. We have to pitch you something, but then you have to rank them according to the official ranking system of Friday Night Movie, which is top one is buy. Like if you remember VHS, buy it. Rent,
yes,
back when you'd rent things. But meh can be, we don't really like to have, because we are lovers of all things movies, meh doesn't have to be the lowest as much as it's just the outlier. It can be neutral.
It can be the lowest.
Yeah.
It could be the one you like the least. It could be the one you're the least familiar with, the one you're least moved by,
Or it can be one that
interpret it.
You didn't make a compelling case, so I'm giving it a push, right? So
buy, rent, and what was the third one?
Meh.
Oh, great. Meh. Okay.
Exactly. That's the spirit of the game.
Exactly. And however you deliver your meh is the spirit of what you're saying. So I think each of us should take one. And we have had our own notes, but my sisters don't know that my take is not on our list because I'm playing my cards close to the vest.
Okay.
Bring it on, guys. Bring it on.
So I can go first unless one of you two wants to go first.
You go first.
I only want to go first.
I'm
afraid
really
Shy
pissed.
wants to do the same one as me.
Is yours also not on the list?
No, mine's on the list. Shy says his not on the list. Mine is on the list.
I'm keeping my cards close to the vest.
Okay, so I'm picking this one because I specifically know Emily is not familiar with the Avatar universe, with Avatar: The Last Airbender universe.
Neither am I.
Not the blue people that James Cameron
No, not the
made.
blue people.
Yeah, I thought. Okay, great.
The Nickelodeon animated show for children, but really for everyone because it's phenomenal.
By the way, a masterpiece in character-driven storytelling is Avatar.
It's incredible.
The best. Forget animated. It's the best story I think told on television.
So,
and everybody that watches it feels the same as them. I have not seen it yet.
Lily, we have to get on this then. Lock ourselves
obsessed
Do
with
it.
the show.
It's as a kid who grew up with
Not
Star
just
Wars.
them.
I just want you to know, as a kid who grew up with Star Wars, where Star Wars' shine has definitely been damaged in the last 10 years. my saving grace is that the Avatar universe that Brian Konietzko and Michael Dante DiMartino created is like still perfect and unsullied and like unruined, so that like that's the universe that I love now. So that's,
all right,
that's how good.
Bring it on, Becky.
Okay.
Give it to me.
Okay. I haven't practiced this yet, so hopefully I don't fumble too much. Okay, so in this universe, I won't obviously be explaining the universe to you. There is a young female villain. Her name is Azula. She is the daughter of the most powerful lord, the most powerful villain in this whole universe. And from a young age, we know Azula has a little evil spot in her. She has a darkness in her. She takes pleasure from her younger brother's pain. She enjoys mocking him and seeing him humiliated. And this type of behavior is rewarded by her father. And she grows into this sneaky, conniving firebender, which is her power, her skill.
Oh, that's cool.
But Azula, as the daughter, has to work, twice as hard, 10 times as hard to prove her worthiness still. In doing so, she develops an extraordinary power where she can shoot lightning from her hands, which is, unmatched by anyone else. And as she grows in power, her mind slowly breaks and she goes crazier and crazier until she's absolutely insane with like lightning shooting out of her hands and losing her mind and trying to destroy everyone around her so she can, claim the throne for herself. And she'll take anyone down with her in order to do so. So that's Azula, I think, one of the great villains of the Avatar universe.
And then also because the characters, and I'll just add this because it's a great choice, Becky. I think she is one
That's
of the
your
great.
pitch. Help your sister.
I want to say I think Azula is one of the greatest villains ever. Because the characters are teenagers, the show also grapples with their social settings. And she is the ultimate mean girl, like bully of her best friend.
Does not know how to not be a mean girl, right, in every way, shape, and
so
form.
The social relationships are, she is genocidal, but she is also like socially genocidal. So
she's like a teenage mean girl. Queen bee.
Yeah. Lily, do you want to go or do you want me to go?
You go.
Okay. So I actually had like two options. Both of the options that I'm drawing from, I'll pick one and commit to it, and then I'll tell you the other one. are mothers that are evil, and the reason why I picked a mother that is evil is that you hung out with our mom. Our mom.
It makes total sense.
Great segue, Shai.
No, our mom is the best. Like.
Yes,
the sacredness of moms in our life, both like our mother, our grandmothers, my wife as a mother, my sisters as mothers, like they're saints in my world, right? So the idea that a mother and a maternal figure is evil, and on top of that, working against their child, and almost like sucking from them, and this is feeding off of them. Is the most kind of terrifying concept to me. So I'm going to go with the mother character from Coraline, voiced by Terry Hatcher. That's because the actual, the evil spider mother, not the real life mother, because the idea that a mother could, I don't think there's anything more insidious and terrifying than a mother using maternal gifts and maternal protection as a way of serving their own and feeding their own evil, and just that the vision of her trying to sew the buttons onto the eyes of her own of the daughter so that she can feed off of her spirit, to me is truly just one of the most terrifying things. So I'm going to go with her. I will say my alternate choice, which I'm not picking, is the Queen Alien for similar reasons for similar reasons, but I think the scarier one, because there is that truly maternal component, is the mom from Coraline.
You know what's going to be, sorry, before Liddy goes, what's going to be,
Please,
you're putting me in an interesting position, which is I'm going to have to basically say who got the best pitch, but I'm going to have to like suggest I promote these insidious people or these insidious characters. Like, yeah, a mother who feeds off her child, she wins. Like, this is precarious, guys, but I'm here for it. Okay, keep going. Are you done? Sorry.
I'm done. That was it.
Okay.
Great pitch. Intense. Yep.
Okay, so mine is not a cartoon.
It's true.
I don't know if you are familiar with the show Sons of Anarchy. Are you?
I am.
Oh, okay. Is that bad? Should I switch mine?
No,
Lily,
Okay.
Lily, stop
Lily,
trying to
just go.
cheat.
No, because I don't know if
cheat.
it's better if she doesn't know the character.
I don't know.
No, I think it doesn't matter.
You have
Okay.
to.
We're
Doesn't
saying it doesn't matter, but we
Doesn't
have to work
matter.
twice
Okay.
as hard if she doesn't.
Oh, okay. But I think that there have been some great female, like I was struggling with Cersei because I think as a viewer, like I think she is one of the most evil characters ever created. But there's something that I kept going back to. I really, really thought about this and I kept going back to Gemma. I think Gemma Teller is one of the great villains of our time and doesn't get enough credit, I don't think, in pop culture. As she wasn't, I don't think she was on any of the lists that Becky and I looked at in the conversations we had, but Becky brought her up. Didn't you bring her up, Beck? I think when we were talking and I was like, oh my God, it's so brilliant because it's literally of Shakespearean proportions. The show is based on Hamlet and the story of Hamlet, but it elevates, I think, the drama of the tragedy because of her character. I think that, and if you're familiar with her, she is the matriarch of this big motorcycle gang in California, in Southern California, and the mother
Northern
of
California.
Northern California.
It's Northern California. And it's she is the mother of the heir to the motorcycle gang. And so for lack of a better term, he's going to basically become the head of the, I don't remember all the like gang terms now because I saw it so long ago, but she is basically ushering in this new era as the father dies, right? But it was, known all along that she clearly was aware of the murder of the original father, or the original like head of the gang. And what I love about her villainous character is that everything to her is justified. She does not know she's a villain. She doesn't believe she's a villain. Everything she's doing is for her family, for her children. Similar in a sense to Cersei, but Cersei, I think, is a little bit more empty. Whereas Gemma, there's such a texture, as Becky said, her clothing, her hair, her nails, her face, everything about her body language infuses this character with a humanity, but a humanity that doesn't, as a viewer, justify to me, doesn't take away from her villainous, extremes as she murders her son's wife, thinking that is the right thing to do, to think that you're so right that you could murder the mother of your grandchildren to justify your being right is so extreme. And then taking it a step further, I know Gertrude in Hamlet obviously dies, but it's a much different circumstance. But in this, it's the son that kills her. He shoots her, and in a way, it's almost the most merciful thing to do because she can't handle being ostracized from this club. Like she wouldn't be able to live because it means everything to her. And he almost like puts her down at the end of the show, which is terrible. But it also, in a way, is the only thing the son can do for his villain of a mother. It's so to me
that's
rich.
so interesting because think about it, in a villain that's so extreme that the only way to end their arc is essentially to have them put down
exactly,
like an animal in that
you're making a compelling case here.
What I think is really interesting is that Gertrude in Hamlet, who's obviously it's Shakespeare, right? It's ultimate. it's debated if she kills herself or not. She drinks poison at the end of the play. She dies. It was a tragedy. Everybody dies, right? But he could have done that. Kurt Sutter could have had Gemma kill herself or accidentally die. There's many different ways to end that story arc of this incredible villain, but the choice of having it be her son, it's just so intense. I think it really brings her character full circle. And to me, she wins. Like it's a beautifully, I think, developed villain in my opinion.
This is very hard, I will say.
What's your favorite brand of evil?
She doesn't have lightning come out of her hands.
Mean girl who wants to control everyone around her.
Like a firebender.
The high school bitch that just gets out of control.
I mean, a high school bitch can be terrifying.
Can be really scary. The soul-sucking mother or two mothers. Wow, that sounds actually also very interesting. Two mother characters.
Soul-sucking mother, or the matriarch of a motor gang who kills her son's wife. This is truly...
and essentially her husband. She is involved in the murder plot of her husband.
This is so difficult. I can't wait too long because I'm being
just go with
recorded.
Your gut. Just go
with my gut. Here's what I'll say. I'm trying to separate my knowledge of these characters because I know Gemma Teller and I know what's in Coraline. What is it? The Beldam? What's she called?
It's something like that. I just know it as the mom, but
the mom. Yeah,
she has a name.
Yeah,
it's the Beldam or something like that. It's the
So I'm trying to separate me. I'm literally trying to just evaluate your pitch. I think I'm gonna have to. Shall I start with the winner or the renter? What do I do? I think I'm gonna buy Lily's Gemma Teller.
That's a great choice.
I mean, we can't argue. We can't argue.
It's literature, so I feel like
really
I really.
No, but I'm trying to remove that. I think maybe here's why.
Because she's so
it's actually maybe in the face a little bit because we do get a lot of backstory. But again, if we're talking about the texture of it being a decision and doing regardless, that's how your pitch very much talked about her. You know, we see her decision making and doing it regardless and not looking back. Really.
And they don't give you, I mean, you know a little bit about Gemma, but you actually, most of what you see of Gemma is in the moments of the show.
It's in the moment. You don't learn about
like,
her
she was a traumatized kid and that's why she's
They don't sugarcoat her evil.
Yeah. Do I have to give a meh?
No, I don't. I never play by the rules.
Lily
I cheat all the time.
It's okay. I will rent Azula and the Beldam. I do think Azula is amazing. But Shay, I gotta say, and this is me again, I'm trying to remove my own emotions from it. Maybe the Beldam is just too hard to digest to be a villain that we find empowering. If we're talking about a female villain having to be empowering, I don't know if she feels that way to me, you know.
Well, I'll say that you can. I mean, Azula and Gemma have moments where their power is contagious to the audience. The Beldam is just terror, as far as
exactly.
There's nothing that makes me want to identify with them. Whereas there are moments, especially if you watch, the Airbender show, when Azula, because she's also a great military strategist, right? When she is like achieving these incredible victories, where you're like, wow, this lady knows what she's doing. Like, she's a boss. Yeah,
that's a very good thing to add. Actually, it's their power is contagious. If we're told, I was thinking a lot that someone I quote regularly is Meryl Streep, The Devil Wears Prada.
That was on our list. She was on our list.
I won't say much more.
I don't even know if she's a villain.
I won't say much more.
I don't even know if she's a villain because I think it's one of the best characters ever.
Ever, and also contagious. Like you want to be able to say, and I think this often, and then I don't say it, but I think, by all means, move at a glacial pace. You know how much that thrills me. Because I sit and I'm like, yes, all you people, keep considering rather than deciding.
I love it. I feel like that's such a high note to go out on here on our conversation about female villains. Thank you for indulging us. Thank you so much, Emily, for giving us your time and for indulging us. Before we say goodbye, do you have anything that either you've been watching, listening to, reading that you want to recommend? It doesn't have to be anything new. It could just be anything that you love or something new that's out that you've been enjoying.
Yes. I think Severance is exceptional.
Yeah.
On Apple.
Really good.
By Ben Stiller.
Yes.
I think the fact that he chose primarily a comedic cast is brilliant. I was just really impressed with how that was executed and how engaged I was in one. I thought it was acceptable. And it discussed so many things without overtly doing it. So I thought that was exceptional. I recently watched a film that was recommended to me by a director named Elvira Lind. It was also very brilliant. It's called Open Hearts by Suzanne Bier, who clearly went on to do great things. But it's from 2002. It's really great. I really recommend it. It's a Dogma 95 film.
Oh, cool.
And then, I've been watching a lot of 90s fare, early 90s fare. And I think actually, if we also want to name one that has some villains in it, I rewatched Death Becomes Her.
Lily and I talked a lot about that movie in the last week. That was a childhood favorite of ours. Childhood favorite. I probably saw it 20 times as a kid. It was on VHS.
For any listener who hasn't watched it.
I'm so glad you brought that up.
How great is it? It is hilarious. It is ridiculous. And somehow it's so, I also, hot take, I think if we talk about Meryl Streep, who is Meryl Streep, in so many great films, I think maybe when I am reminded the most of how great she is, it's when she does roles like that. When she does ones that are not dramatic, but when you're like, oh, you can play this insane, not insane, this extreme person.
Right.
With such flair and fun. So those are some. There's a lot more, but they're also very different, which is interesting. It's Severance, Open Hearts, and Death Becomes Her.
But as you were saying, it's about great story and great characters, and that can take any shape or form.
So I want to, for my recommendations, because we also give ours, I want to key off of yours saying Death Becomes Her, because Death Becomes Her, everyone talks about Meryl Streep. I think the brilliance of Goldie Hawn is also really important.
They're both amazing.
Goldie Hawn is just like, I feel like there's an entire genre of comedy and women that Goldie Hawn embodies. And a show that I love that my sisters sort of half recommended to me, but I'm just super into, is The Flight Attendant. And I feel like
we full on recommended it to you.
Well, no, you recommended it.
We full on recommended it. We just weren't sure if it was for him.
You weren't sure I was going to like it.
I weren't sure.
Love it. And what I love of it is I feel like Kaley Cuoco, I still can't get her. I got to get her last name, but
it's okay.
I feel like if they were doing this movie 30 years ago, like that, Goldie Hawn would be the person in that role. And the Goldie Hawn-ness of that show makes me so happy that I'm so into it. So that's I'm starting season 2, and I think season 2 is as good or better than season 1. And so I love that. And I give the highest award you can give in our show is called an I Told You show, which is you have to call the people who recommended you a show a genius, and they get an I Told You show award. So I give my sisters the I Told You show for,
Thank you very much.
but I'm giving it to you both equally. You have to share because I don't remember which of you went in first on it. So The Flight Attendant, Lily and Becky, you are geniuses. I Told You show.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Much appreciated. Anything else you're watching, Shay? Just that?
I finished the second season of Mythic Quest, which talk about really interesting female characters. Charlotte Nickdow's character of Poppy Lee is super interesting. And that's a show that like every season starts off zanier comedy, and then it takes like a dramatic turn and is almost like it feels artistic for the last 3 or 4 episodes. I really recommend that show. I think that's a really show that defies expectations.
Lil, what about you?
I recommend The Climb. which
Big
circle
time.
back, because I enjoyed that and a lot, and I like that kind of humor, sort of just really dark comedy. Is my jam, and you can find it on, I believe, Hulu and Apple.
I watched
TV.
it on. I watched it on Stars last night.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
or the other night.
Amazon.
Ago,
Yeah. I watched it on Hulu, and so I really enjoyed that movie a lot, and so I very much recommend it, because I don't think that I feel like those kinds of films are few and far between, where you just get these these characters and that sort of painful like realism of life.
Truly imperfect.
Funny.
I mean, truly imperfect people, like the opposite of your black and white villain hero story kind of thing. And I'll say there's a scene in that movie where they film a Christmas party almost entirely from the outside of the house. And it's like the camera's like circling around the house, that I thought was one of the most creative and compelling chapter, because the movie's told in chapters. Like, one of the most compelling chapters of a movie I've ever seen is the way in which that is filmed, and you're following the story around the building, and it's like circling in and in as it gets more intense.
I did really think the camera work and the cinematography was really interesting, especially in the opening scene. When the two friends are biking.
That opening
the two main
sequence
characters are biking, and
actually
now imagine
the opening sequence is on another level.
Imagine, well, first of all, thank you, Lily and Shay and Becky, all of you. Michael and Kyle are clearly the brain trust behind that. I will tell them, hopefully you can get an opportunity to talk to them as well. But and the DP on that film, Zach Cooper's scene, I did an amazing job. Like, that scene around the house, I think all the apple boxes in New York State went to this tiny movie, truly. And it was executed a bit like a play. In terms of the opening scene, I think also imagine that the two guys riding up that hill 40 times. One whole day of rehearsal, one whole day of shooting, are also the director and both the writers and the producers. So that, those are elements that from behind the scenes, I really both enjoy in terms of respect them. Also that I find it funny how they torture themselves to get to the brilliance that they do.
So first of all, I was out of breath watching that, but also I didn't know anything about the movie. I don't really like trailers, and so I didn't know anything about the movie going into it. I just knew about two friends. I thought that the whole movie was going to be a conversation over a bike ride.
Me too.
And I was
Were you panicking a a little?
I wasn't panicking, but I was like
absorbed in it.
Me too.
Like, what's gonna?
Me too. I was like, is it possible that this whole movie takes place on this road? Just be ready. I had the exact same thought.
I was fixated on that. That's another one of those moments in the parts in the movie where the tension of like, it's very mundane in some ways. They're having a conversation. They're talking about whatever, but the tension ratchets up as the relationship is coming through, as they're breathing. And I'm like, oh my God, it's called The Climb. Are they just going to be climbing the mountain the whole time? It was really
great. That's my
thank you.
So yes, we all fully endorse and recommend The Climb. Before we sign off, Emily, is there anywhere on social media people can follow you, or that you want to be followed? Or
so I am not on social media. I decided to be that modern. That I'm
very smart of you.
But our website, watchthisready.com, allows you to sign up as well. We will probably soon launch our social media, but we like to be under the radar until we're not, you know. So check out the website, watchisready.com. We'll also soon be having some swag that we're selling there, or giving, depending on.
We hope you like swag because we send
I love
Friday
swag.
Night Movie swag. So
I love swag. I actually asked the team, I was like, we need baby socks. Watch is ready, baby socks. And one thing I want to mention is there is a movie that I produced in the fall of 2020 in New York City called Godstein, premiering at Tribeca, opening Friday, which should be an absolute blast. Don't know yet when it's going to be released. Thank you. But so anyone in New York City, come along.
That is so exciting. So it's showing now in Tribeca.
Yeah, June 10th, 8:30 p.m. is the premiere.
This year. This is so exciting.
That's amazing.
Yeah. It's fun.
June
It was
10th.
made
That's
when no
wonderful.
one was... I think we were genuinely the first non-studio bubbled up film in New York City shooting a movie in October 2020. It was interesting.
Wow.
That's
cool.
so exciting.
Yeah.
That makes me think back to Vanilla Sky. You mentioned the DP from Vanilla Sky, which I think is one of the most beautifully shot movies. And I'm thinking of that empty Times Square.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, crazy. All right. You can follow me at Paper BK Princess on Twitter, though with the warning that I don't tweet, but I am technically on there. Lily, where can people follow you?
Same kind of warning. Chichi, ChiChiK Gomez on Twitter. But again, I'll like your stuff, but I don't usually tweet.
And Shy, bring us
I
home.
absorb all of the social media activity for the family. I am at Pancake 4 Table. That's Pancake and the number 4 Table on Twitter and Instagram. All of the Friday Night Movie shenanigans are at Fry Night Movie on Twitter and Instagram. FridayNightMoviePod.com is where you can see the latest episodes or listen to the latest episodes as well, and sign up for our newsletter that we have kept our commitment of way less than once a month. In fact, I think we're going on maybe one every 6 months at this rate, which is really exciting. I think that's the best promise you can make anyone with having a newsletter. And
Totally.
I just signed up for Watch This Ready, so I'll find out how you all do. And our theme music will kick in actually later in the post-production part, but it is by What Does It Eat? And I think is that it for our show?
Yeah, that's all.
Show. Bye, guys. Thank you so much, Emily.
Thank you so
Emily.
much. Have a lovely day.
Thank you.